Hi, I'm Benjamin Hunting with Auto and I'm here today at Portland International Raceway with the 2015 Dodge Challenger Hellcat. The Hellcat is the latest king of the muscle car crib. Basically, what they've done is taken the Challenger Hemi, replaced 90% of the parts, supercharged it, and ended up with 707 horsepower and 650 pound-feet of torque. This car also comes with an 8-speed automatic transmission that's seen its torque capacity increase by 30% just to handle the mighty engine that's under the hood of the Hellcat. You can also get the 6-speed from the Viper, and that transmission too, because the Viper only has 640 horsepower, has been given a refresh, giving it an oiling system that actually passes oil outside to a cooler and back into the transmission to keep things from, exploding when you're out there on the track. I know what you're asking yourself. Why would anyone need a 707 horsepower muscle car? The answer is nobody really needs that, but it's a fun number and it beats the closest competitor, which is the Ford Mustang GT500. The future's a bit uncertain for the Shelby GT500. We don't know how much power it's going to make when the next generation Mustang comes out, but the current version makes 660 horsepower, and that is as close as it gets to 707. So there's a huge gap between the Challenger and its next closest competitor. So the 6.4-liter supercharged engine that's underneath the hood of the Challenger Hellcat is essentially an all-new design. There's 10% part sharing between this and previous versions of the Hemi engine that were in the SRT model, but so much has gone into making this vehicle produce 707 horsepower that it should be considered its own unique block. You have the same 2 spark plugs per cylinder that you do have in the regular Hemi, but this supercharger on top takes a full 80 horsepower simply to run, and it's amazing that you have a motor that can have an 80 horsepower parasitic drag with no appreciable difference on the dyno. This is the same classic old school design that you can get into 2-valve Hemi. It's a simple overhead valve engine. Not much has changed since the 60s, except the amount of technology that can be dumped in on increasing the efficiency and power that can be pulled out of that type of design. Fortunately, Dodge hasn't just dropped a hellacious engine under the hood of the Hellcat and called it a day. Anyone who's driven an older version of the Challenger is well aware of its many deficits, including its weight, its suspension system, and just a general driving more like a sedan than a sports car feel. In order to get around that, Dodge and SRT have done a lot to the chassis. They've given it 2-piece racing brakes up front, bigger than 15 inches, with 6-piston Brembo calipers up front and 4-piston in the back. They've also stiffened up the suspension as well as the damping on the shocks. It's got 3 different drive modes. It's got a customizable drive mode, which means you can take track, sport, and normal and shuffle it all around and come out with something that fits your driving style. And it also comes with launch control. When you have 707 horsepower, launch control is almost a given. You have to have it to get any kind of use out of the car. But as we've discovered today, it's not necessarily the magic pill that's going to see you smoking everyone at the stoplight. This is a heavy car with a lot of power sent to the rear wheels, and whenever that happens, there's going to be some drama, especially on a hot track or on tires that aren't necessarily as wide as they need to be. It's going to be difficult to launch a 707 horsepower car under the best of circumstances, and as we have found out today, we're having trouble matching the manufacturer's numbers, which are in the mid 3 seconds. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I am saying that you're going to have to learn how to drive this car in a variety of situations before you can truly unlock its potential. We haven't taken it out on the track yet. We're going to be doing that later this afternoon, but it's probably going to be a little bit more forgiving from a roll. You'll also notice with the 2015 Dodge Challenger in general and the SRT Hellcat specifically a number of styling changes that have been made to the front and the rear of the car. The SRT model has this cutout inside that matches the splitter, which is fully functional. This car will do 199 miles per hour. It's not engine limited, it's drag limited. There's no actual electronic limiter in the car. So when you're at that speed in a car this big, you want to feel stable, and that's what this bad boy is here for. You'll also notice there's a huge amount of frontal area that's open, and that's by design. You want to feed as much cold air into the engine and the supercharger as possible. You have heat extractors here that's just sucking heat, keeping everything cool underneath. You have this inlet, you have the huge open grille, and the huge open space here. There's no fog lights, there's nothing to get in the way. It's just basically a huge air pump sucking in as much oxygen as it possibly can. The styling cues that you saw up front are reflected in the back. You now have the split grille, and you also have the split rear lights, and that's by design to reflect the 1971 Challenger. It's a little bit more modern retro, if you want to put it that way, but it does freshen up the Challenger quite nicely. It's very difficult to take a retro design and make it look new because over time you can't stray too far from the original cues that have made it so appealing. But Dodge has done a really nice job in changing the personality of the car without changing the character of the car. The 2015 Dodge Challenger Hellcat is intimidating to drive, and a big part of that has to do with the broad torque range of its 6.2-liter supercharged V8. The power is available at almost any speed, which means I found myself feathering the throttle not just in corners, but also in straights, particularly here at Portland International, which has a unique curving back straight where you have to stay close to the wall while the track falls away to the other side. It's not an easy car to drive quickly. It's also not a difficult car to drive fast. I know that might sound a little bit weird, but hear me out. There's so much straight line acceleration from this car, it's absolutely ridiculous. So if you can connect the corners, you can blast through a lap fairly quickly. However, there's that word again, quickly. There's so much power available from this engine that if you can connect the corners, you can blast through a lap very fast. But if you want to go quickly, that means more than just connecting the corners. That means developing a rhythm with the car. That means learning the track, learning the car together, and that is more difficult to do in this vehicle. One thing I really noticed about the Challenger Hellcat is how much sharper it's willing to turn in compared to, say, a 392 or the 6.4-liter Scat Pack car. It just feels a little bit more nimble in the front, while at the same time threatening to overpower the rear wheels at any time with its massive power delivery. It's a delicate combination. It's not something that's easy to master. I would say that if you're an expert driver, and how many of us can really make that claim, you could really make this car dance, even on a short track like Portland. But if you're a novice, intermediate, or someone who just wants to occasionally go to the track and have a good time, this is maybe not the best choice. You might be happier with a 392 or with a Scat Pack car. After having sampled the Hellcat on the track, one of our hosts pulled me aside and suggested that I try it out on the street because, as he pointed out, this is really designed to be a badass street car. So I took his suggestion, headed out into the roads of Portland, and just kind of moved from traffic light to traffic light, hunting down some prey. Camaros, Mustangs, Corvettes, Vipers, Ferraris, anything is fair game for a car like this, provided you could hook it up. And you know what? He was right. This car's a lot of fun on the street. You have the crazy V8 rumble from the dual stage exhaust. You have the supercharger whine that, when you're not booting it on the track, you can hear quite well through the window as you accelerate away from a stoplight. And you have the ability to break traction at speeds of up to 25, 30, 40 miles per hour just by putting your foot down. I took an automatic car out on the street, paddle shifting, just blipping things underneath bridges, bouncing off concrete walls. It's absurd. It makes you sound like a hero. It makes you feel like the king of the world. And honestly, isn't that what muscle cars are all about? Making you feel like you're the king of the world? In that area, the Hellcat delivers. Also, if you want to go sideways at 35 miles per hour just by putting your foot down on the gas, you can do that too. Do you have an unlimited tire budget? The Hellcat is the car for you. Anyone else? I don't know. Maybe stick with the 392, maybe stick with the Scat Pack, maybe skip with the lowly RT, maybe stick with the 3.6-liter V6. It's up to you. One thing I can say for certain, the 8-speed automatic in this car is excellent, light years ahead of the 5-speed, and in fact, for cruising on the street, it might be the better choice. I found that the clutch travel on the 6-speed manual was extensive, and you needed a good deal of pressure to get the car in gear. I'm not saying it's a bad gearbox, far from it. It's smooth shifting all the way, but the clutch is something that takes some getting used to. So if you're just gonna drive this to the drive-in, if you're just gonna drive this to the local meetup or the cruise night, go for the automatic. The other good thing about the automatic is you just have to put your left foot on the brake and your right foot on the gas, and you're a hero. Check, check, 1, 2, no traction, no traction.